Hey everyone, today we're talking about the Hometown Heroes program. So, if you are in one of these categories, you are eligible for first time homebuyer assistance. Now, this assistance can be for closing costs and down payment up to $25,000. This actually went into effect as of June 1st and it was signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis. So, Dom's going to tell us a little bit about the program. We'll go into details about who's eligible, how to apply for the program, where to apply for the program, and so forth. So, Dom, tell us a little bit about the program so far.
Yeah, man. So the Florida Hometown Heroes program, what it's set up for, Ron DeSantis pretty much held a meeting, described all of this earlier, and it does go into effect today. It aims to help Floridians in more than 50 critical professions purchase a first home by providing assistance with down payment and closing costs. So the Florida Housing Finance Corporation is administering the program, and Governor DeSantis says eligible would-be homeowners can begin applying through a loan officer, any loan officer of their choosing, broker, independent brokers are better, through a loan officer starting today, June 1st. So the money will not be ready until July 1st when the fiscal year starts, but Floridians can begin applying through their chosen preferred lenders on June 1st. So they can begin and get into application today.
So,
So
keep
go
in
ahead.
mind a quick note there. We are eligible to accept this program. As soon as funding becomes available to you, we can apply those funds towards your closing cost and down payment. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that because the funds will be available July 1st, we encourage that you start the application process right away. Don't wait till the last minute. And also keep in mind your closing date once you're making offers with the intent of using these funds for your closing. If the funds will be available July 1st, don't schedule your closing on July 1st or even a week after that. Give yourself some time so that the application can be fully processed. You can receive the funds. The funds must be in your account. Us, as mortgage brokers, we do have to document where the funds came from. So give us a little bit of time, give yourself and the sellers a little bit of time as well. So I would say maybe schedule your closing 2 weeks after July 1st. Don't schedule it so close to July 1st, just so that we can have a little bit of leeway there.
Yeah, for sure. Cushion room definitely is preferred there, and will definitely help it out, especially us when going through the purchase process. So, just to give a breakdown of eligible workers, the eligible workers include law enforcement officers, firefighters, 911 operators, teachers, daycare workers, and all manner of healthcare workers. The program does act as a second mortgage, and who is also eligible are military veterans, active duty service members moving to Florida, and surviving spouses of deceased veterans, regardless of whether or not they're buying a first home. So the state
Yep.
of Florida is really, really, really helping out these healthcare workers. Our veterans. They're really looking out for our current active duty service members, which is a huge boost. And shout out to Ron DeSantis for this one. It's great news.
Yep. Yeah, and
Um,
we have the full list of the eligible professions. We'll include a link either down below in the comments or I'll put it up on our social media just so you guys have access to it. And one thing that you mentioned also, Dom, keep in mind, guys, these funds there will be a second mortgage on your property. It's 0% interest. You don't have to repay it until you either sell the property or you refinance the property or you move out of the property. So keep that in mind. It is a second mortgage on your property for the purpose of helping you become a homeowner, right? So you can buy the property, you can pay your down payment, your closing cost, but it will be a second mortgage. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about buying a property and then selling it in the near future. You do have to repay these funds back.
Correct. It's going to be used just as like any normal grant would be that the state of Florida issues. A lot of first-time home buyers often look for the grants. They often look for that assistance, which there's nothing wrong with. You just have to really do the extra research and figure out whether it's going to be right for you or not.
Yeah.
If you want to be staying in that home for more than a certain amount of time, you have to do your research and make sure that that grant will be eligible for what you want to do. Like we stated in our last podcast, everything is pretty much situational. If your situation deems it possible, then you got to pursue it. If not, then it is what it is. But like you said, it does become due and payable in full upon sale of the property, refinancing of the first mortgage, or a transfer of deed, or if the homeowner no longer occupies the property as his primary residence.
Correct.
So there are a few minimum requirements as well for this program. I know the most important one is you can't have a FICO of no less than 640. And I know that there are some income limits, and we do have that PDF on hand, if I'm not mistaken. So we can also
Yep.
link that one as well.
There are some income limits to your household, whomever is buying or applying for the loan also. So keep that in mind. Just for a point of reference, so far we have a Broward as your income limit of 136,000, and you have Miami-Dade of an income limit of 146 to 150,000. So if your household makes more than these income limits, then you're not eligible for the Hometown Heroes program. Now, that it's a good problem to have if you make too much money in this case, but there are some income limits there. Now, going back to something you mentioned also, there are other grants and programs that some cities, some counties offer. So it's always good to search on the county websites for those particular grants. In addition to something like this, keep in mind that for example, the city of Miramar has really good first-time home buyer programs. City of Hollywood, but those funds are very limited and they are at a first come first serve basis. The Hometown Heroes is not at a first come first serve basis. It's more of a, there's 100 million funding. There should be enough funding to supply the demand for these professions as first time home buyers. So keep that in mind as well. There are other grants available. We'll try to put the link in the comments area, or we'll put it somewhere on social media just so you guys can see other options. Keep in mind also, if you Google this, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and some lenders, some banks, some brokers will kind of mislead you to think that there are other, or they'll give you first-time home buyer assistance when in fact they're really not, right? And we can go into details, on specific scenarios, but be skeptical of anything you Google or anything that you're finding online that doesn't come directly from a government website. Like if you're looking for a grant in Broward County, make sure you're on the Broward County website, not on a lender specific website, not on a bank website, things like that, right? So grants are typically second mortgage on your home. They're not repayable. There are some requirements for income. There are some requirements for location. Same thing applies to the Hometown Heroes. So there are other options. Be skeptical of anything you find online, and always check the government websites to make sure that it's actually a real grant that you're applying for.
Definitely. And you mentioned it earlier too, when you were just explaining how it goes about with this grant. This is county specific, correct? Most grants are county specific, and I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily look into that or take grasp to that. They just figure it's a grant and it's specific to wherever they want to move to. So with it being county specific and with it being, holding to a second mortgage, can you kind of explain how a second mortgage would be beneficial to people and kind of how a second mortgage works?
Yeah, it's it helps buyers get into their home. Buyers that don't have maybe the down payments and the closing cost available to become a homeowner. Even though it is a second mortgage payable later once you either sell, refinance, or move out, it is a way to get people into home ownership. And if there's anything that we learned recently in the past 1 or 2 3 years, is the importance of home ownership. We've seen these interest rates climb very quickly, and we've seen the cost of property insurance, cost of everything going up, which has essentially turned to rents going up.
Yeah.
So, many times people are saying that it's not a good time to buy, but it's an even worse time to be a tenant. And we've never seen how important home ownership is, as we've seen in the past couple of years. So even though it is a second mortgage, you will have to repay it later on. It's a zero interest, and it's a way to get you into home ownership, right? And the last thing you want to do is continue to be a tenant in this market. Rents are continuing to go up. We have inflation going up. The cost of everything involved, or everything that's the owner, they're just passing it on to the tenant. And ultimately, if you're a homeowner, your mortgage principal and interest, your interest rate is fixed for 30 years. That portion of your payment won't change. So it's a little bit of, it protects you. It protects you against rising, rents. It protects you against rising interest rates, rising costs, and so forth. So even though it is a second mortgage, don't let that discourage you. It's a very good way to get you into home ownership.
Definitely. And with your explanation there, with rents rising and costs just rising in general, especially in the state of Florida, when Ron DeSantis brought this Hometown Heroes program to the public, he also brought it to the I think it was based off of your last podcast, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday, with dealing with insurance. And obviously there is a big increase right now going around with homeowners insurance policies. And I was doing some independent research and kind of just, questioning, why are home insurance companies leaving Florida? I know that with the rise in costs, there are some companies that are liquidating right now in 2022. Based off of just market research, I found that 3 companies so far in the state of Florida have liquidated. And I kind of was just looking around, and do you have any type of independent reasoning as to why this could be happening? Just like from possible external factors or maybe internal factors such as insurance fraud or the risk of storm seasoning happening. So
Yeah.
what is kind of your outlook there on the
all of the above there?
Yeah.
It becomes a liability, a numbers game for these insurance companies, and ultimately it stops being profitable to these insurance companies to insure the South Florida market. And what ends up happening is, you'll have an insurance company insure the market for a limited amount of time, and then they'll leave because they can't afford it. There's too many claims to the policies. There's the risk of storms, risk of flooding. So last week we talked about the legislation that was passed to help the crisis that we have with property insurance. And again, it's, even though property insurances are going up, that just gets transferred back to the tenants, that added cost. The landlords, they're not going to assume that cost by alone without passing that on to the tenant. So
Yeah.
Ultimately, hopefully that new legislation brings some new companies back into the South Florida market. And if there's one thing that's going to improve or help lower insurance premiums, is going to be competition is going to be created by bringing in more insurance companies. We could only bring more insurance companies into the market by making it more affordable to them to insure the South Florida market. So if somehow that legislation helps make the Florida market a little bit more affordable for them, then we'll see insurance costs go down.
Yeah, and it seems that it's just a continual cycle. Like, let's say we have the increase here in insurance policies, and it seems like if you are renting, especially in South Florida, the costs just continue to accrue, and it gets put on you. A landlord's not going to just take on that entire cost and say, okay, here, let me just let my tenant live in here with this cost increasing, and I'm not going to increase their rent. They could be an amazing tenant. So I think that just goes to stress how important it is to really pursue home ownership in South Florida. And I know a lot of people, like we tend to use the saying, wait on the sidelines, and it's just so important to get off the sidelines and at least start inquiring, get with us, give us a call, let us know. We can set up buyers consultations. We can make sure that we relay our information, your expertise, any type of data, anything we find that's beneficial, we can relay that to you, and we can find a program for any type of quote unquote tenant currently that's looking to get out of that and looking to get out of the insane increase right now in rent. So it just seems like it's a continual cycle. And with that increase in insurance policies, it's I also found that not only could it be affected there from fraud and just from storm risk, but it also kind of goes around with like roofing age. Like let's say roofing age is correct. So yep. Some companies their insurance companies, they're tightening their underwriting process. So that's all obviously to lessen risk. And with
Yep.
lessening risk there, I know that it says here in this article that I was reading, Southern Fidelity, Progressive, and Universal have chosen to continue operations in Florida, but have non-renewed tens of thousands of policies. So
Exactly.
with non-renewals, can you kind of go into that aspect there, and does that kind of just go back to the process that you were discussing on Friday?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it goes back to, insurance companies come in temporarily. They come in, they insure a pool of properties, and then at renewal, they just won't renew them. So they'll make their money, but then they'll get out of the market. And what ends up happening is it'll leave the homeowner either, up in the air without any insurance, or having to go to Citizens as their only option.
Yeah,
And, you know, the legislation that was passed about property insurance now requires or prevents these property insurance companies from using the age of the roof only as a means to cancel the policy or to not renew the policy. So I definitely think that's a step in the right direction in terms of helping the property insurance crisis that's happening. I definitely think that the Hometown Heroes program is a step in the right direction in home ownership, right? And along with the help for down payment and closing costs, you also have, or there will be, a proposed tax relief coming for Hometown Heroes. Essentially, the same will be the same pool of professions that will see the tax benefit. It will be going up for vote in November of this year. And it's going to give or increase the amount of homestead exemption that these professions receive on their primary residence. Hopefully that gets passed. I mean, I'm all for giving incentives for these frontline workers. At the end of the day, when COVID hit, these guys were in the front line carrying our essentially our community, keeping it all working. So I'm all for that. I really hope that that gets passed. It's looking to be about a $50,000 increase in the homestead exemption. So that's it's a big discount on property
yeah,
taxes. And once that comes up for vote, we'll see how that goes. I'll definitely be voting yes on that. And along with the Hometown Heroes funding program, we get the tax relief. Now we are getting some hopefully some relief in the cost of property insurance. But then interest rates are continuing to go up. So what does that tell us going forward in the housing market? We can, it stands to reason that as rates continue to go up, property values have to adjust and come back down. Now, it's worth looking at some data just to kind of keep us ahead of the prediction. And we can see that home new home ownership or new construction home ownership did take a slight decrease this past month in April, right? And that's a leading indicator in what's to come in the market. There are, if you look up on the news now, the news is telling you that the home prices went up. They're looking at March as March closings as a forecast of what's going to happen forward. But I don't think that's the right way of doing it. If you're looking back at March, you're essentially looking back at 2 months old data to try to forecast what's going to happen going forward, to try to determine whether there's going to be a market correction, a market crash, right? That we hear all the clickbaiters saying that is going to happen. And
of course.
but ultimately it's important to know what's happening in the market, whether you think that there's going to be a market crash, a correction, or an increase. Just look at the data and see what's happening. So I can tell you that looking at new construction sales, keep in mind, new construction sales are measured by new contracts, not closings. So
Okay,
that's why it's a leading indicator. It kind of tells us ahead of time before they close, kind of tells us the trend or shows us the trend of who's buying and who's not. So if we continue to see new construction properties sales decrease, I think it's going to add to the forecast that there will be a correction coming towards the end of the year. So we have an increase in interest rates of almost 3% now, added to potentially some lower sales, and then you also have or may have an increase in inventory. So with that being said, even if there is a correction towards the end of the year, it's definitely not a good time to continue to be a tenant. And again, it's, I don't like to make vague blanket predictions or advice or give advice that way, because everyone's situation is different. But I can say that rents are going to continue to go up. There is no there's no stopping that, because inflation is going up. And as the Federal Reserve adjusts the rates up to try to combat inflation, it's just going to drive the cost of everything up more and more, which then means that landlords will pass on those costs to the tenants, and therefore the rents of the tenants will continue to go up. It's a cycle. So whether you think there is a correction or a crash coming at the end of the year, I don't think that's a an encouragement to stay a tenant, right? There's many other benefits to homeownership other than just saving on your monthly payment. You have wealth accumulation. You have peace of mind, right? That your payment's not going to go up five, six, $700, $1,000 like rents do. So there's many things to keep in mind if you're a tenant, and whether the market adjusts, crashes, or does whatever in the short run really doesn't matter to you if the medium to long term strategy is to buy a property and live there and accumulate properties over medium to long term um, terms, right? So that's kind of my thoughts on what's going to happen on the market. Something to keep an eye on. We're looking at it very closely on our end. New home sales, obviously interest rates, and overall inventory in the market. Just kind of keeping an eye on that too. So that, look, we're going to just give our clients the honest data, and we're going to give them professional advice. And many times people confuse professional advice with perfect advice. No one can tell you what the market's going to do. No one, whoever tells you the market's going to do X and Y is essentially just guessing. No one really knows, right? So the best that we can do is give professional advice based on the data that we have, the forecast, the experience that we have, without the expectation of being perfect, because ultimately no one knows what the market will do.
Awesome. It's excellent advice, man. I appreciate it.
Yep.
That's all I have for today. I'm about done and wrapped up there. Anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, that's it. We'll leave some links down below for your information. We'll kind of grab some PDFs and send them out. If you guys are not on our email list, shoot me a text with your email, and I'll send you the PDF of this program. And if you have any questions or concerns, obviously, just you could always reach out to us or leave us a comment on if you disagree, agree, or if you think this program will be good for the housing market, or if you think the market is going to do X and Y. I'd like to know. So look forward to next time. Until then, guys, thank you so much and stay safe.
For sure.